Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conservatish, episode 198. My name is Peter Feliciano. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening. Make sure you like, rate, and review it. And find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano, and also on my backup at Conservatish. And you can support my podcast and my music at patreon.com/Conservatish. Ladies and gentlemen and sirs, we are very privileged to have Girls Against Government. Yay!
Woo! Excited to be here.
I know I'm the best. I'm the absolute fucking best. And I'm really humble too. I'm like the humblest person in the world. Speaking of humility, where can people find you first and foremost?
We are at Girls Against Government on Instagram.
Okay,
and that is all.
Nothing else to promote. Nothing else to. Okay.
Not yet. We're thinking about doing some TikTok, but I can't get over the China thing. I don't know.
But see, that's the thing. But there's nowhere safe. There's nowhere safe from China as well. I mean, I listen to a lot of and love a lot of New York comics, and a lot of them I know are against government stuff, and they're really smart and they're very conscientious and they're just rebels. But even them, they're doing a little like, well, I am performing at a place that requires vaccines. And I'm just like, come on, man. Come on. Don't make me choose. Don't make me unfollow you. Come on. Yeah. So there has been some disappointing areas, but besides
this whole thing has been disappointing.
This whole thing has been yeah, it really has. Speaking of disappointment, when did you get into being against government?
Oh gosh, probably like around 2012, I want to say. I somehow got my hands on Milton Friedman and was just like, the whole world changed after that. Couldn't go back to seeing anything the same, because I was for a long time like super hardcore liberal, and like a lot of college students, I was in college at the time, like. I voted for Obama, like I was hardcore on the left, and then grew up and realized the economic impact and the unintended consequences of a lot of those policies, and was just like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. So.
Right. Now, where you currently are, do you still see them as unintended consequences, or do you feel, I'm not saying one way or another, but I am saying, do you feel they're still unintended?
Yes and no. I mean, it depends on the specific policy, but I think a lot of times, like the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Like people want to do good and they want to help other people, and feel like the best way to do that is by using government, and then, don't think about what's happening in reality.
Right. I also I agree with you. I think that as far as the majority of liberals, and I keep saying this because a lot of my followers are very upset with me when I say it, but I think most liberals are really quite reasonable people. Like I have a lot of friends who follow me and they just have good intentions. Now the people at the top, the puppet masters, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they're probably evil bastards. But the people underneath, they want Black lives to matter. And they think that, they think that Black people are being hunted in the streets because Anne Hathaway said it at the fucking UN. They have big hearts. They don't like to do research. It's difficult to question your own beliefs, cognitive dissonance and all that. It's difficult to question, especially when you've sunk a lot of donations and a lot of time and a lot of emotional investment into these things being truth.
Right.
To question all of that is just it's just very difficult,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I reached the point back in 2016. After Trump was elected, I didn't vote for him. I voted for Bernie, and then I begrudgingly voted for Hillary. And then a girlfriend at the time was like, hey, she called me the night of Trump winning, and she was like, we're all going to die, and this is the end of the world. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think we're all going to die. Like, I don't think this is that big a deal. And so I started doing research, and surprise, surprise, when I started doing research, my beliefs changed.
That whole thing. So I actually was living in China, and I moved over there in 2015. So I watched that whole election play out from overseas. Totally wild. Like I remember talking to my coworkers in the days leading up to the election, it was like, there's no way this Joker's going to pull this off, blah, blah, blah. And then we woke up the morning of and the news had broken and we were just like, what? So crazy.
Now, when you said we, at the time, were you also like, I don't want Trump to win?
I was, by that time, I was already pretty libertarian leaning. So I voted for Gary Johnson despite his Aleppo slip-ups. And yeah, I was not pro-Trump at all.
Okay. And currently in 2020, did you, if you don't mind me asking, you voted for what's her face?
Jo Jorgensen.
Yeah. Did you vote for her?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you're pretty staunchly libertarian. You don't trust really either side.
Yeah, I mean, they both kind of, to me, I think like the, old school Republican party principles made a lot of sense to me. And then, Bush era, even before then, like they started moving in a direction that to me seems like it's more like the left than they think it is, like still, using the government to, do all of these different things and really being just as statist as the left, but just for other things.
Just as what is it? Just as what?
Statist.
Ah, okay. Statist meaning towards the state, the government.
Right. Yeah. Never ending wars, blah, 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 blah.
Right. Now, do you feel like, even though you didn't support Trump, do you feel like he was some sort of movement in the right direction?
In some ways, yes. But I think the biggest positive to come out of that was just a lot of people taking a second look at the US government and being like, what the hell is actually going on? Who are these people? What are they doing? And kind of waking up to the fact that like maybe they don't have our best interests at heart. Maybe they're just kind of looking out for themselves. Yeah. So for me, that's a positive. But, all of the ripple effects of his, less than likable personality was difficult to watch.
Right. For a long time, I kind of felt that same way. I was like, would you just stop tweeting, dude? Like, just, just put things. At the same time, I've had a couple of people kind of push me on that on my show and just be like, well, okay, because here's why I think it might have been maybe not positive in some ways, but also not like the push for be nicer. I think he could have done enough, but the people who were saying be nice, that's where I draw the line, because I feel like those type of people are never satiated. You know what I'm saying? Like the people who are like, no, just change this, just change that. Like if you, at a certain point, the general, whoever it is, or the leader or of a team, the boss, at a certain point, I'm not saying he was at the right point, but at a certain point, the boss needs to be like, no, I'm going to do whatever I think is best for us, regardless of,
Yeah, and I'm not sure, like, even no matter what he said, there was always going to be pushback, and there was always going to be spinning it to make it sound worse than it was, or to turn it into something that it wasn't. Like, right. I mean, he was never going to win the media over. Like, that was just done.
Right. Do you feel like that was done? So what do you feel as far as, for me, I kind of feel like, again, some of it is well-intentioned. I don't believe the media is well-intentioned at all, but I don't think it's necessarily malevolence as much as it is, I want to keep my job and I'm willing to do anything to keep my job. I'm willing to do anything. Give me money and attention. Please click, please click, please click. And the people who are above them in the government are happy to utilize that fear and that desperation for fame and clicks and money to do whatever they need to do, Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. So you started changing around in 2012. What was your experience culturally like in your, were you out? Were you open about it? Or was it still like a...
Kind of. I mean, I was kind of like a baby libertarian. Like, I was like, maybe this can only exist in like a fantasy world. Like, is this just a philosophical thing? Like, is this at all practical? That was a lot of the conversations that I would have with people about it. But I mean, back then, like, social media was nowhere near like what it is today. So I wasn't like, following other people or listening, to what they had to say or like posting anything at all. I mean, it was really just like my own internal shift. I went to a super, super conservative university, and I was like an out liberal there, which was an interesting dynamic. And then after graduation, like completely switched my viewpoint. But yeah, it was it's been a wild ride. And now, like, having cemented all of these ideals, living under the CCP for years, like, yeah, no going back now. My eyes are too wide open.
Right. Before we get into the China stuff, what was your experience being that out liberal in, like, did you face a lot of crusty frat boys? Because I gotta feel like the frat energy comes regardless whether it's a guy with a Black Lives Matter t-shirt or a guy with a Turning Point USA t-shirt. What was your experience faced there?
So I distinctly remember, like, my first week on campus walking through the quad, and there were like giant billboard size photos of aborted fetuses, and somebody out on campus with a clipboard collecting signatures to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I was like, okay, where am I? Like, what have I gotten myself into? What is going on? So that was a bit of a like shock. And then, yeah, I mean, I remember having, like, of course, slightly intoxicated arguments with like sorority girls telling me that Obama was, Satan, and just all kinds of stuff like that. Like, I remember the night that Obama got elected, the house that I was living in with like all these other girls, like, I remember seeing all these girls like bawling, crying that the world was over and this is the worst thing that could ever happen. And I was like excited because I had voted for him. So I was like, yay, he won. And then to see literally everyone around me be like devastated by that news was kind of odd.
Right. And was it difficult to, after leaving there, when you happened upon, what was the exact circumstances? I always feel like, for me, there was always a rebellious inkling before because I used to be, someone tells me like, voting for this person is good because they have black skin or something, like, oh, okay, well, I was too busy trying to, keep it. The 20s is all about, keeping a job and trying to get laid and trying to like figure out your footing like in life, So I was too kind of distracted to think thoroughly about what I believed and why. How did you happen upon Friedman?
Honestly, I don't remember. I think it was like my boyfriend at the time had gotten his hands on it or something and shared it. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but from there it was just like a never-ending rabbit hole.
Right. In some of your travels through the rabbit hole, what are some of the things that you're like, this is definite bullshit? Like some of the people who I follow or who have followed me, like I know right away, if I look at their profile and it says Christian conservative patriot, I'm like, there's going to be something, because I'm in the middle. I talk about filthy things on my show. You're not going to like me. You're going to say, well, I don't think. So, some of the Q stuff, some of the pizza party stuff or whatever the hell, like where along the rabbit hole, what's an example of something you're like, that's not a thing.
I mean, yeah, QAnon is wild. But I don't know that I've really like gone that far down the rabbit hole. I guess like, just some normal things. Like I talked with somebody last week about, his argument was to ban all drugs. And I'm kind of going, hi, where have you been for the entire war on drugs that has completely failed and made everything worse? So that's kind of one for me. And, I'm struggling with the whole like gender identity politics, because on the one hand, I'm like, just let people live how they want to, like, who cares? I don't care what you want to do in your bedroom. Why is that any of my business? But now it's turned into this like totally crazy, polarizing issue where like we have to protect our children and, all of this stuff. Like that is starting to kind of bring up some question marks in my mind.
Yeah, same. I have a lot of, I mean, I've had trans friends on my show. I've had gay friends on my show. I've had, whatever. And I don't mind what people do in their bedroom either. My problem is, and bad actors are always going to find a way anyway. I think dumb is dumb is dumb. Stupid is stupid does, and regardless of the flag that they fly, mental illness is going to be mental illness. And it doesn't really matter whether, I mean, I feel like those same people who are like, wanting to get people fined for calling them the wrong gender are the same people who would have been, in the streets crushing Ice-T records back in the 90s because he made a song called Cop Killer. It's the same, it's the same disease. Just because it has a different symptom doesn't matter. But with the trans stuff, it is a little slippery because same thing as you said, good intentions. Well, Antifa. Well, of course I'm anti-fascist. So the label equals the thing, right? The label equals the thing. Well, just be nice to trans people. Okay, but the implementation and the definition of what's mean to them, the implementation of how to fix that, that's some creepy shit. That's, in Canada and them, getting people in trouble for that. And
Well, and like, regardless of the issue, I kind of feel, whether it's drugs, whether it's trans rights, whatever it is, like, we have some cultural issues, some social problems that we're trying to use government to fix, which is never going to work. And not only is it not going to work and achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve, but it's probably going to make things worse. I kind of feel that way toward, like, name an issue. That's kind of how I feel about it. Like, whatever's going on, I mean, we've got to look within our own communities and what is happening socially. It's up to us to fix. We can't be waiting for daddy government to come along and like swoop us up and save us.
Right. Where along, I mean, because some people have said, well, back in the day, before government was as large as it is, we had church communities. We're an example of ways that we would curtail the humanity thing. You know what I mean? Where's another example of us taking care of ourselves without daddy government?
I mean, look, any kind of volunteer organization, like I volunteer in my community, I take, elderly people grocery shopping, like anything like that, anything that you voluntarily do to make your community a better place to live. But I think we've kind of gotten away from that because we're like, well, I pay all this money in taxes. The government should be fixing this problem that I see. And we're happy. I've heard so many people tell me, like, I'd happily pay more taxes if the government would X, Y, Z, right? I'm like, okay, that's an interesting way of looking at things because they're doing so much good with all the money you already give them, right? Like, let's give them more.
Right. And I think what do you think about this idea? I think that's a normal, like I said, the 20s, you're just trying to, stay above water, or at least I was anyway. But along with that, I feel like with maturity, age-wise, also coming, I'm a senior, so I get this. But with maturity comes emotional awareness, self-awareness. And when you see the dirty, dark human inside of yourself and inside of people that you love, and you see some of the good and the worst of us, and see some of the bad and the best of us, you kind of understand more like, oh, government is made up of humans. Humans are going to do human stuff, and they're going to take advantage. They're going to do, they're going to siphon off just a teensy bit from themselves, just a little bit. It's fine. I worked really hard. I worked really, really, really hard just to give me a little. You know what? I have a friend who needs a job. I'm going to hire only my friend, and then my friend hires only my friend, and that's how the comedy scene is dead right now. I mean, it's not dead. It's thriving in some ways, but it's dead culturally because dummies hire dummies. And if someone who needs a job, who's they're not really actually a funny person, but they like comedy, but eventually they'll cave to, oh, we shouldn't make a joke about X, Y, Z. They'll hire other people who also should think you shouldn't make a joke about, and so that it shouldn't make a joke about people. Flowers. It's a never ending,
I thought Joe Rogan was single-handedly saving comedy. What do you mean? Didn't he fix that?
Listen, I appreciate some of what that dude does, but at a certain point, I'm 19 years sober, so I don't smoke pot. So I don't know. I can't get into him too much.
Well, hey, I don't smoke, and I'm a woman, and I still like his podcast. So
there you go.
you just never know.
Do you feel like, I feel like at a certain point when you get that big, maybe it's, yeah, I appreciate a lot of what he does. I kind of equate him to Nirvana. He's a gateway drug. You know what I mean? Like, he's a gateway drug to libertarianism. He's like, oh, I like, a listener's like, I like pot. Yeah, aliens are interesting. I hated Trump, but, I also don't think you should stop making jokes about things. And so they get into that, and then they fall down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of feel like somewhere along the line, he kind of will cave. I feel like he's a caver somewhere in there, but
I hope not. But I always skip the episodes where he's talking to like other MMA fighters or UFC people or whatever. I'm like, I don't care about any of this. But when he has people on like that woman who was a defector from North Korea, like, who else is going to get to talk to her except somebody with that amount of, listeners? That kind of stuff is really interesting.
My favorite ones are the either musician ones. Like I watch, one of my favorites is the Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins. You're too young to know who they are.
I know who they are. Did not listen.
Did you say Dave Mustaine? What'd you say?
I said I didn't listen to them, but I know who they are.
Yes, of course. You were listening to like Spice Girls and Britney Spears.
Yes. Have you seen my page? We are Destiny Child, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys kinds of girls.
Yeah. As soon as I saw, I think what got me about your page was like Girls Against Government. I like that already. But then it was, some meme that was made from like Legally Blonde. I'm like, all right, this is a good page. I like this page.
Yeah. That was like originally started because I was just during the 2020 election and then the preceding like lockdown craziness. I couldn't post anything to my own personal account because I would just get in these crazy arguments with my friends and family. And I couldn't do that anymore, but I had this like need to say something. So I was like, let me just start a different page and kind of be the voice that I haven't seen anywhere else of like somebody who's, younger, a woman, shares my same views, has a sense of humor, likes all the same movies and music I like. Like, let's find that. Right.
Yeah, I like being that guy too. I like being that guy who I'm going to post a meme today that's making believe, a New York City server comes up to me and says, can I see your papers? And it's literally Steve Brule. Do you know who Steve Brule is? Dr. Steve Brule from Tim and Eric. But it's like a goofy adult Cartoon Network Adult Swim show where they like, so it's like it mixes in the liberalness and the anti-liberalness. It's just like that nice little, there's got to be a home for us. I am. I'm in Manhattan.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Things are getting wild.
Well, that's the thing too, is I moved here, like I signed my Manhattan. I moved here from California, which was already, part of the reason I got out of there is because I'm a musician and I needed to be around other musicians, and you can't find that in San Francisco. But also was the, liberal politics. And then I got here, and the day after I signed my lease, everything got shut down and my job ended. And it was just like, okay, all right, I guess.
Welcome to New York.
Here we go. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's probably why the pandemic, it was because of Peter Feliciano moving into Manhattan.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. The world does revolve around me. Now, let's talk about China. My experience with China, I was dating a musician back in 2015, and she went over there to do 6 months. I mean, Chinese people, they love American culture. They like the music, you know what I mean? And so they paid an American band, a company over there, bar over there, paid an American band to come out for 6 months and play 6 nights a week, give them food and lodging and blah, blah, blah. And just play American music. So she was the Britney Spears, Taylor Swift of the American pop music band. And I went over there for a week to visit her, and it was an interesting experience. It was an interesting experience.
What city was it?
Shenyang.
Okay.
Yeah. All I know is that it was a third-tier city, but it was still, 10 million fucking people. But my experience was everything was cheap, except for coffee. They had KFC, they had McDonald's, they had American music. They smoked indoors, they spit indoors. You know, they whenever me and my girl were walking around, or there were a couple of black guys in the band, like they would just stare. People would just stare. Like, oh, Kobe. But on an individual basis, they were very kind people. But the vibe I got was we're dead. And here's what I mean by we're dead. The vibe I got was we are at the whim of whatever the government wants. There was a girl who was a friend of my ex's who wanted to come to America to visit. And the government told her that she was not allowed to because they thought she might stay. And so, yeah, the government can allow you to go or not go. Obviously, there was also social media, and this was 6 years ago, but there were social media restraints. People found ways around them through other VPNs. But, you know, I think it was WeChat or something. The government can read all of that and decides what you do and don't do, and you know, it's some creepy shit. Also, the vibe I got was culturally, the reason why I think anyway, the reason why, or I think it is related, the reason why the government could do whatever they want is because it's been bred into them. I am happy to be just a cog in the clock. I'm happy to be just whatever my class is, that's where I'm happy to be because I'm playing my role. It's not like the American thing where like I could get famous tomorrow. It's very like more humble, which has some good qualities to it, but also means the government has their boot on your neck at all times. So that's my little rant about, you know, for now anyway. Knowing me, I'll get back into it. But what was your experience? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just about the, like, you know, happy to be a cog in the machine. Like, when it wasn't but 2 generations ago that Chinese people were starving to death and eating leather belts to stay alive and like doing all kinds of crazy things just to live. So yeah, they are happy to be a cog in the machine because they get, you know, there's a middle class now. Like you can, you know, afford to like have a dog as a pet and things like that were unimaginable for your grandparents. So to live through like that amount of growth, you kind of are like counting all your lucky stars of like, yay, like I can, you know, I can afford to feed my kids McDonald's and KFC and whatever, and they can get fat. And it's great because that means that they're well fed. Like that's a good thing. Whereas we're like, you know, we kind of take all of what we have for granted and forget how bad it could be.
Right. How did you get over there?
On a plane? No. What do you mean?
Yes. No, I'm saying, how did you get? It's a strange thing for a girl from Iowa, wherever the fuck you're from, to get into China. Was it for work? Yeah.
Yeah, I took a job there, actually in manufacturing. So I was working in a Chinese factory for a couple of years in a tier 2 city. So it was one step above the city where you went. But yeah, it was like 7 million people population wise. And it felt like, you know, third world country.
What about it felt third world?
I mean, it was difficult to adjust. Like I had never even been to Asia. And then I went over there to interview for the job. And 2 weeks later, I moved my whole life there. Like it was a very quick turnaround for me. So it was a lot of culture shock. Like I spoke not a single word of Mandarin. And just to be plopped down in the middle of that with like, you know, no resources essentially was wild. Like grocery shopping was a totally different experience. My living situation was a totally different. It was just like constant all day, every day, all little things in life that you don't think about when you're living here, that there is like everything is a challenge. So it just kind of wears on you after a while.
Right.
Yeah.
How long did you stay?
4 years.
Okay. What was your experience in the actual factory? Was there meaning, I think we have a stereotype that it's, you know, they're living in squalor, and that the little kids are like, trying to take the things out of iPhones, the little gold out of iPhones to melt it down. What was your experience as far as the squalor angle of that?
I mean, I was working for a foreign company, and I didn't see any mistreatment of workers or anything, but it was, I mean, watching them, just the amount of work that they were doing. They were there like all day, every day. It was nonstop. But they were, like you said, like they were really kind people. I mean, so I had a Mandarin tutor, and so I started learning some of the language, and being able to just, chit chat with the dudes down in the factory or ask them certain questions about this or that project. Like that was, interesting.
Right. No, it sounds like you're saying that they worked all day. You did not. Was that because you had a different position, or was that because, well, white girl don't have to?
Well, so there were people who worked in like the office jobs. Like we had, Chinese engineers and, people who did customs and all that kind of stuff. So those hours were pretty normal, like 9 to 5, or I guess it was like 8 to 5. But out in the factory is a different story. Like if we have a project with a deadline, you're going to be there until it's done. If you have to work, 10, 12 hours a day, that's what's going to happen.
Was there any griping on their end?
Not really. I mean, probably to each other, but I'm the outsider, so who's going to say that stuff to me?
Right. Yeah, I didn't even see. Maybe this is a language thing too, but I didn't see a lot of griping just in general. And I think maybe that had to do with me being a foreigner, but also I kind of, maybe it goes to the taking things for granted thing. Maybe it goes to also. I mean, I had a guest, a regular on my show named Sheldon, who's Japanese American, and he said he remembers asking his grandma, why do you have those scars on your back? And she said, well, that was from a Chinese whip. And to be like the heavy stuff that she never talked about. She got out of there. She's grateful to get out of there. The gratitude that people have when they get to America is a whole nother different beast. As bleak as it is in some areas here, especially now, I kind of take it with a grain of salt, because I kind of feel like, number one, we've been through worse, and number two, a lot more worse stuff is going on elsewhere.
Yeah. That's how I feel too. I'm like, I wake up and I'm like, I have clean drinking water coming out of my tap, and I can see the blue of the sky. Like going years without seeing the sun or the sky or the moon or the stars. Like, I'm a big nature girl, so I like to camp and hike and do all that kind of stuff. And like not being able to see the stars for years on end was horrible. So yeah, now, I mean, and I in no way experienced any kind of like real true hardship, but just having experienced what I experienced and then coming back here has just made me infinitely more grateful, for sure.
Right. Yeah. I remember back in October, I think it was, they would turn on the heaters.
Yeah.
My girl told me they would turn on the heaters, and that means everybody has to get a mask, because they are literally burning coal. They are literally burning coal to heat cities. And I don't see no Greta Thunberg. I don't see nobody. How dare you?
Burning trash. I mean, you just burn your trash.
They burn their trash to get rid of it.
To stay warm, and to get rid of it too.
God bless them. Amazing. Yeah,
I remember I was there when the G20 summit was in Hangzhou, which wasn't that far from where I was. And they had been like salting the sky to clear the air for these incoming international diplomats. And that was the first time that I had seen the blue sky, like the whole time that I was there. And it was like, the G20 blue, like that's what everyone was calling it, because you don't see that color hardly ever.
So now, okay, this is a whole nother, I like this. All right. So, okay. Besides griping about working 12 hours.
Yeah.
Was there any griping about, this folds into the slow boiling of American frogs. Do you feel like it's a similar thing over there? Because it's like, well, this is the way we have it. So we'll buy masks. We just have to wear masks between October and February or whatever. Is it that type of thing? You didn't see any griping about that either over there?
No, I mean, and I think like I remember talking to a couple of Chinese friends being like, yeah, I mean, this is just the way it is. Like, what's the point in complaining or trying to change it? Like, it is how it is. We all know that the government is corrupt, but like, what are you going to do about it? Like, that's just how it is.
Right. Do you feel like there's still a handle over here on what are we going to do about it?
What do you mean?
Do you still think that there is something we can do?
Yes and no. I go back and forth. So my answer, if you asked me yesterday, probably would have been different. But a lot of days, I feel like the only thing that I can do is vote my conscience when I have the chance and, raise good kids who understand how the world really works and the dangers of giving government too much power over our lives. And other than that, I mean, yeah, what can you really do? Like, are we gonna, what can you do?
Right. I find a lot of my cultural message seems to boil down to make sure, regardless of whatever extreme you're on or whatever side you're on or not on, take care of yourself. Take care of your little cul-de-sac. All I'm responsible for, because if I have a once a month, and I'm sure it's also because I drink like, 8 shots of espresso a day, but once a month, I'll get into this spiritual spin where I'm like, I can't stop, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I'm like, Pete, go to bed. And I'm just, no, I got to fix the world. And that'll happen like once a month. But ultimately, not only what am I responsible for, but what can I control? Okay, I think not always, but there is a correlation between I'm going to fix the world and how many dishes are in my sink unwashed. I'm going to fix the world and how are my relationships? I'm going to fix do you know what I'm saying? The more I think I'm focused out there on what they're all doing and not doing right and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, how am I doing? How are my relationships? How's my money? How's my, am I volunteering? And the more I focus on that, not that I should be so focused on that I just, hey, do what you want, government, but take my time out off of social media, take my time out to take care of my friends, text somebody who's having a worse day than I am. The more I do that, the better mental kind of mindset I have,
For sure. Yeah. And then it spreads, right? But like everything starts at home with you and how are you doing and is your house in order? Are you doing what you can for yourself, your family, and your community?
Right. When, can you think of any experiences in China that stick with you in a negative way? Meaning, like, especially governmentally, or this is what happens. This is where we'll be if we don't pay attention.
I mean, there's not like one giant, thing that sticks out, but it was all the little things. Like every time you move apartments, let's say, you have to register with the new police department in that district as a foreigner. And that was the bureaucratic BS involved in that every step of the way. Like you have to have 27 documents with 14 different stamps from 12 different agencies. It was just like pure chaos. Anytime you had to do anything with your visa, anytime you moved, that was a pain in the butt. But I remember similar story as you told earlier. A friend of mine, like her and her boyfriend, wanted to move abroad. They had worked for foreign companies. This is when I was living in Shanghai. They had worked for foreign companies for a long time. They spoke English. They were kind of culturally more American than they were Chinese, and they wanted to leave, and they couldn't. They were not allowed to be issued a passport even. So watching her go through that was I mean, heart-wrenching, like something, how many Americans even have a passport, right? Or like use it. And any of us can just walk in and grab one if we want to. And seeing that was difficult. And then just kind of one of the things that I liked and disliked at the same time was that it was just kind of like the Wild West when it came to human life. Like they were all so willing to take their own lives into their own hands and just like, risk it for the biscuit, like just speeding around town on little e-bikes with no helmet, with, the whole family and the dog packed on the back. I mean, you do you, sir, looks pretty dangerous, but if you want to, like, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my experience with taking a cab. It's like the equivalent of like $8 for like a 10-minute cab ride, RBs or whatever the hell. And then also we're all driving and the lines on the road are just light suggestions. It's dog eat dog, just in it, and I don't mean dog eat dog because it's China. But it's dog eat dog. It's just everybody's going, just make a U-turn in the middle of the road. Screw it. Yeah, that was.
And if an ambulance comes behind you, nobody moves. Like nobody gets out of the way for emergency vehicles because they're like, well, like I was here first. Like I'm not moving for you, Oh no, someone's dying. Okay, well there's a billion more of us where that came from. So, oh well.
Exactly. James R., who's been on my show a bunch, shout out to Pirate Radio. He talks about the difference culturally between China, and now we can see from Afghanistan. In our country and in the West, essentially, there's this idea of women and children first, right? We may have screwed that up a lot, especially in New York and San Francisco. That's why there's so many lonely women. But there's an idea that goes around of at least culturally, like some sort of chivalry, some sort of like, okay, we're taking care of our girls and our kids. Over there, there's another billion behind us, and as we just saw in Afghanistan, a bunch of people were running for the plane and escaping, and it's all men. It's all men.
Yeah,
that we're all gonna die, men first, just in it for because we can just get another one. I'll get 15 wives. I'll get, I'll just make another kid. It's not a big deal. And culturally, I don't think it's malevolence. I think it's just a different type of culture. But I kind of do believe, I'm sorry, libertarians, but I kind of do believe there is some objective morality. You know what I mean? Like, just don't kill motherfuckers. Like, I think that's we can all agree. Don't.
But why is that? Don't kill me, libertarians. Most libertarians would agree with you, wouldn't they? Like, don't hurt.
Yes.
Don't hurt people and don't take stuff. Like that's.
No, I agree with you. I had a break the state. Dunk Limpman, he was an anarchist, not a really libertarian. I'm sorry, Dunk. He was on my show and he was like, morality, just if we insulate, and get a small anarchists are a different breed. So maybe I meant
what is that? Like, if two consenting adults want to duel to the death, go ahead. Like, I'm fine with that.
Can we watch? That's
Televise it.
Right. We'll go a few more minutes if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got out of China. What was the cultural shift back? How was that experience?
Oh my gosh. Well, the America that I came back to was not the America that I left because it had been 4 years. We were 4 years into the Trump administration by the time I came back, right? So it was like the heat had just been turned up to 11 by the time I came back. And it was, readjusting after being an expat for any number of years in any country can be challenging, but like coming back to that was just pretty rough, honestly.
In what way? Mostly on social media?
Yeah. Everything was political. Like, over there, like I could escape it, right? Like I didn't have to think about American politics if I didn't want to. I had to like actively seek it out and, get on VPN and go on these websites and look for it. So when I had my fill, I could just kind of turn it off and get away. And coming back, it was just like everywhere all the time. That's all anybody wanted to talk about. And I think a lot of, I think a lot of Americans felt that way. It wasn't just me as an expat. Like it was just overwhelming. Like you wake up and it's like, what now? What's going to happen today? Yeah, that was rough, but a lot of parts of it were great. Like I moved back to be close to my family, and I got to see them a lot more often. I got to do all the things that I had missed doing and eat all the American Chinese food that I hadn't had in forever, and miss that sweet and sour chicken, man.
No, dude, I have a friend who's been on the show, Jake, not in a while, actually. Anyway, he's a pest control guy in San Jose, and has sent me shots of going into Chinese food. Sorry, everybody, for what I'm about to say. Everyone cover your ears. But has gone into, and a pest control friend of his in California sent him a picture of a Chinese lady in the back of the restaurant skinning a rat and using that for food. There's no OSHA. Yeah. There's no OSHA in China. No. There's no.
I remember seeing guys on like bamboo ladders, barefoot in shorts, no gloves, no helmet, no eye protection, welding an electrical pole, like a telephone pole. I'm like, there's no such thing as OSHA. And I think like when I first moved there, I was trying to still, like eat well and like, stay healthy. But after a while, like I just had to I don't know what I'm eating and I don't want to know what I'm eating. Like I just have to stay alive. So, oh well, I'm sure I ate all kinds of things that I have no idea, but.
Right. Yeah. You can't really go to them and be like, does this have gluten?
Oh my God. I had some friends that were vegan that I was kind of like, that must be really difficult.
Yeah. That was my experience too. I remember I've told the story before on the show, but me and her were walking somewhere, and I think going to a mall or whatever. And not only were there not a lot of crosswalks, they were just like, good luck. But also we came upon a pile of rubble. We're like, why is this pile of rubble? And we look up, and there was a hole in the wall of the building, and men were just throwing stuff from 20 feet, 15 feet onto the pile of rubble. There was no cones. There was no yellow tape. There was no, hey, look out, someone there with a cone, with a whistle. It was just like, avoid getting hit with rock. That's it.
That was one of my favorite Chinese sayings is chabuduo, which basically means like, it's close enough. And that is kind of their attitude towards a lot of things. Like, it's close enough. It's good enough. Like if the wall falls off, oh, well, we'll just build another one.
Right. And there's something also good about that, because OSHA, as much as they protect people, again, same thing with the implementation, good intentions. A lot of that is also like, you need to pay us money to build on your own property. It's like, but I paid for this already. I'm paying for it regularly. And I still have to get to dig a hole in my own, what?
Yeah, everyone thinks that libertarians are like, I want to own my own nukes. But libertarians are really just like, why do I have to pay you to like drive my own car and paint my own house? Like, do we have to do that?
Right. The idea, everyone gets mad at getting a ticket, right? But then it's like, okay, but the ticket, I mean, I literally just made a quick mistake. I know better, and I'm doing better. This isn't China. I'm not going dog eat dog. I made a mistake of, whatever. And government's like, no, we need $91 for you getting 10 minutes past, staying in this parking spot. No. We need $400 fucking dollars in San Francisco because you went the wrong way on a street that's really confusing.
And doesn't that officer, like, aren't there real crimes happening where there's actually people being hurt that you need to go help? Like, can't we spend that time a little bit better? I don't know. Well,
right. And everyone believes that, but they don't. It's the implementation. It's connecting the dots. You and I, people who think critically, are connecting the dots. And suffice it to say, I think ultimately I wanted to start the show to have everybody on. For the last, everybody from I wanted to humanize everybody. But the last year, it's been mostly, especially since the George Floyd stuff, it was, let me just have all anti-liberals. That's all I care about. Is like just I think it's a big tent. There's some conservatives, there's some anarchists, all of us find that movement revolting, morally, implementation wise. I'm not saying that everybody who I've had on my show or everybody anti-liberal is like, yay, Trump. I've had tons of anti-Trump people on my show. I don't think he was 100% or whatever the hell, but let's stop the bleeding somewhere. And right now, and again, not just because, by the way, everybody, just because Biden's only been in an office, no, we've been complaining about this movement of give government more money, give government more power, no, we need more diversity officers. Do you think there's going to stop? Do you think it's going to actually stop? Come on. There's no, comedians always say, well, it'll swing back. It'll swing back. No. They were doing this 20 years ago. After 9/11, they were doing this for it's not going to swing back. If you keep giving money, if you give a mouse a cookie, they are going to want more cookies.
Yeah.
What do you think is a way forward for us, or something that we can all do besides taking care of our family, besides besides homesteading? What do you?
I know. I'm like, pull your kids out of school, homeschool them, grow your own food. Get off the grid.
Get off the grid. We need to talk about that before we finish here. Are you willing to talk about what your project is, your new thing is?
A little bit, yeah.
Let's talk about it in a vague way. How's that?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about taking your kids out of public school. What is wrong with public schools now?
How much time do you have? Because from top to bottom. So I used to be a public school teacher. I taught 3rd grade and 8th grade, and went into it with the best of intentions. Like, I'm going to help these kids. I'm going to, change everything that's wrong with the system. Like, I can, we can do this. And once I got in, I was like, you're never going to fix this because it's fundamentally flawed. And the biggest, most overarching fundamental flaw is it teaches kids that they're not responsible for their own lives. Like, someone is always telling them what to learn, where to go, how to sit, how to behave, when to talk, when to go outside. Like, literally their entire lives are dictated by whoever the adult is in the classroom, usually the teacher. And when you train kids that way for 13 years from K through 12, you can't expect that at the end of that journey, they're going to get out and be like, oh, I know how to be a functioning, independent, responsible citizen of the world. Absolutely not, because they've been handheld for 13 years, and then we just push them off a cliff and say, good luck, try to fly. So for me, that was, that's the biggest problem, is just that power dynamic and trying to help kids understand that they have the power to create their own lives and to change things within their own lives, and that ultimately responsibility for their lives themselves, their education, lies with them. Right.
Yeah, I was listening to I love Monty Python. Do you know who they are?
Yeah.
And no. I know 19-year-olds don't often know. But I was listening to John Cleese's autobiography, and he was talking about even back, I think he was in college or in high school and college in the 50s. And he talked about, and he didn't even make a big thing of it. It was just in England in the 50s, in high school, they would have focuses. They would have almost like majors, and they wouldn't bother with the other stuff. They wouldn't bother with the stuff they weren't on track to learn, the stuff they didn't need to know. I decided to go to college at the beginning of the pandemic because it's like, well, I don't have a job anymore. Screw it. I'll go get a degree. And I'm getting this degree, and they're focused on, it's focused on music and audio engineering and blah, blah, blah. And it's amazing. But I have to, as per government regulation, I have to take 4 classes that don't fucking interest me, that I don't care about, I have to tick boxes that don't have any application into. Right now I'm learning about, I'm in science and masses and velocity. I'm like, leave me the fuck alone. Leave me alone to do it. Why is the government in my ass? Sorry, I'm cussing a lot, but why is the government why is it up to you what I need to learn? I'm an adult. I'm not, I'm not 13.
Yeah.
Where along the line do you feel should autonomy be taught?
From birth. I mean, kids come into the world, humans are biologically wired to learn. That is how, like, about the world around us. You don't have to tell kids to learn things. They are little sponges. They do it automatically all the time, everywhere they go. You don't have to put them in special environments and special, clothes and special desks for them to learn. They're always learning. It's just, why do we get to decide that all 8-year-olds need to know XYZ when we know that, developmentally, all 8-year-olds are not the same? And we know from talking to kids that not all 8-year-olds are interested in the same things. So why are we forcing everyone to be in this little box and to be a cog in a machine when we could, help them, give them the time and the space and the freedom to figure out, what am I interested in? What am I good at? What am I not good at? And then to practice those things so that you can get to a point in your development where you can make an informed decision about what you want your future to look like as an adult.
Right. Are there benefits to non-autonomy in the way of, little kids stabbing each other, like, because as much as we have a proclivity for learning and etc., we do have a proclivity for violence and raggediness. You know what I mean? And not washing your hands, and etc. etc.
Yeah. So I think that, again, going back to the authoritarian power structure that exists in the classroom, where the teacher is basically the dictator, and gets to tell everyone how to behave all the time and gets to dole out punishment as they see fit, whether or not it's fair, is actually the opposite of what we claim to be and what we aim to be as a society, right? That's not how things work in the real world. We have a justice system, love it or hate it, it has its flaws, whatever, but that's the reality of the world that we live in. We have a justice system, and when someone breaks a rule, they have to go through certain processes. They're presumed innocent until proved guilty. Right. They are afforded the due process of law, et cetera, et cetera. Why aren't kids given that same opportunity? So in the model that really interests me, they basically have jury duty for the students. And so you can, report other kids for breaking the school rules, and they have to go before a jury of their peers and plead their case, and the jury essentially decides what happens to the kid.
Wait a second. Is that what's currently happening, or that's what you would prefer?
This is what's happening in this model of education.
Is a jury of their peers?
Yes. Why do you look so bewildered? Well, when you give kids a lot of responsibility, they step up. They take it.
Oh, you're saying this is okay. All right. Let me backtrack a little bit here. Okay. I got lost there.
All right, I went too far down the rabbit hole too quick.
No, it's all right. Okay. So this is a good thing. You're advocating for this. Mm-hmm. At what age?
As young as 5.
Okay. How do you protect against liars? Because there's a lot. I was a lying ass liar for a hot minute. Yeah.
I mean, how do you protect against liars in the adult world? At some point you can't. And the responsibility rests with the liar to, figure that out on their own. But, I mean, when you watch, let's say, a kid breaks one of the school rules and has to go before this judicial council. The judicial council it's just like a little trial. They ask questions of the defense. They ask questions of the prosecution. They try to get to the truth of what actually happened. And then they make an informed decision about whether or not a rule was actually broken, and if there should be a consequence, what that consequence might be. And kids are interesting animals. So kids who consistently break the rules, kids who consistently lie, the other kids don't want to play with them because they know you're a liar and you always do the wrong thing. I don't want to hang out with you. Like, that's not fun for me. And eventually kids will succumb to that peer pressure and change their behavior.
So you're saying if you imbue them with responsibility and you really stress to the jury, if you imbue it like, hey, this is really important, like, don't be full of shit and don't be punitive, they step up. Okay,
100%.
I'm not seeing that on Twitter. The cancel culture, the cancel power is delicious, and punishment is delicious, and bullying people while you're hiding in a group of people who are bullying is a human nature thing that we do.
Yeah.
How does one protect against that?
Well, I mean, they know that at some point they're going to be on the other side of that table or whatever, right? Like, it's like jury duty. It's rotating responsibilities. So it's not always the same kids sitting in judgment, and it could be them on the other side of that table at any point. So,
Okay. All right. So this is a better model for crime and punishment than what we have right now. What do we have right now?
Well, we have an authoritarian dictatorship, basically, where teachers are responsible for all behavioral modifications, whatever. And, I experienced this as a teacher. At some point, there are those few kids who are just never going to follow the rules. But because it's a state-funded school or whatever, they have to keep coming back. So, I had kids threaten me with all kinds of stuff. I mean, at really young ages, really acting out in some intense ways. And, I was like 22 or something and stressed out and overwhelmed with like 40 kids in my class. Didn't have time to be like, okay, let's talk about what's happening and why you're behaving this way and whatever. Like, that's not happening. So, suspension rates are super, super high. You're making kids stay home from school, and what good does that do anyone? I mean, they get a free vacation from school, they get rewarded for acting badly, and then they get to come back.
Right. Yeah, there's a anonymous San Francisco teacher who's been on my show. She was talking about she had switched over from public to private about a year prior to doing the episode, and so she kind of knew the differences. And she talked about what, and she stressed it obviously from a white guilt standpoint. And she's this liberal white girl from San Francisco, like this, she's not coming at this from a freedom patriot kind of angle, but she was talking about how white guilt is killing black kids. White guilt is hurting them more because these black kids are playing with their phone in 7th grade, 8th grade, playing with their phone, missing the entire class. And the teacher cannot do anything, can't even take their phone. Can't really, suspend maybe whatever, but can't kick them out. They know that there's no real, as a kid, they know there's no real consequences for their actions. And that's because, we have to, she told a story about, these kids are, especially black girls, are getting in trouble, and the way to fix that was to stop giving them consequences, not to fix the behavior, not to adjust the consequences, not to reach out more to the parents, but to just stop giving them consequences.
Yeah, and who does that help?
Right, certainly not the kids.
Yeah. And, there were those couple of kids who would terrorize the entire class. And it's like, then it's not just, me that it's impacting, but like all these other little ones that I can't really keep safe is what it came down to. Like, I can't protect them from this person who is misbehaving.
Right. But she said that the difference was when she switched over to private, these kids know, I don't know what talk the parents have, but these kids know I could get kicked out. My parents are actually paying for this, or they have school choice or whatever to be in this class. And if I act out a certain way long enough, I will lose the opportunity to be here.
Well, and that's just anyone, public or private, anyone who understands that education is a privilege and not a right has that mentality. Like you see, you know, I had kids who were first generation Americans. Their parents had brought them over from Mexico or wherever, and they were some of my best students. I mean, they were super respectful. They were really hard workers. They, you know, really took it seriously and didn't mess around when it came to school, because they understood that all of this could be taken away at any time.
Right. So we'll wrap up. Just please give a shout out for private schools or for school choice, charter schools, whatever you feel is the best thing to do for parents.
I mean, anything other than state-funded schools, honestly, at this point. You know, different kids, different families, different situations. Everybody, you know, is different. So whatever's best for you and whatever you can make work for your family and for your kids, and you know, homeschool, unschool, private school, charter school, whatever it is. You know, there has to be economic consequences at some point. So take your kids out of state-funded schools and stop giving them federal dollars. They don't get the money if your kid doesn't come.
Right. That same thing. I had Nico, the black Filipino teacher. He's been on my show a couple of times, and he was talking about how he's so frustrated with the other teachers because the other teachers also don't have consequences to their actions. The government will continue to fund us. Oh, we need more money. And so they get $1 billion in San Francisco and California. And it's just, we're going to keep this train moving. We're not going to adjust. We might adjust, like stop giving black kids consequences, but we're not going to adjust anything else. We're not going to adjust the way we treat tenure. We're not going to adjust the way we, you know what I mean? In fact, we push it down and push these people who mean well, have good intentions, into more of a box and more of a corner.
And like all things that the U.S. government sets out to spend a bunch of money on, what are we getting for all that money? Like, what has it even gotten us? We spend, 100 times more per kid than any other country in the world. And have you talked to a recent high school graduate? I mean, some of the kids that we're pumping out, a lot of the kids that we're pumping out don't know a whole lot. And it's not their fault, but it's not good.
Right. Thank you so much for doing the show with me. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know I'm a blast, aren't I? I'm the best. Yeah. I don't know how people, it's not just how I do it, but how I do it so consistently is really the question. Isn't it?
Yeah. The only person more fun than you is me. So
everyone go follow Girls Against Government on Instagram. Is there anything else you'd like to plug? Any events coming up? Any books you want people to read? Any?
Not that I can think of. Come hang out with me on Instagram. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Everybody, wherever you're listening, please subscribe, hit the bell on YouTube if you're hitting subscribe. Like this, share this, make clips of it, tag me. What else? Find me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano, or my backup at Conservatish. Support my podcast and my music at patreon.com/Conservatish. On Twitter at Rule62Peter. And lastly, I'm going to be doing the 200th episode very shortly, and I'm going to be doing a live stream. It's going to be a big old event. I've never done a live stream for Conservatish, so you're welcome. And more music is on the way as well. Again, thank you again, Girls Against Government, everybody. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.